Okay, so now let's take a look at the first two bars from Malaguena. Sounds like this. Now what I'm doing is I'm forming an E chord with my left hand. An E chord is played on the second fret of the A, second fret of the D, first fret of the G, and the top two strings, the B and the E, are open. There's an E major chord, but you probably already knew that. Now, I'm not playing the A string, but it's just easier for me to hold this E chord. It's so familiar for me. I'm going to start the picking pattern on the D string. I'll use my thumb there, and then with my first finger, I'm going to play on the high E. That'll be the open high E. Now to the G string, back to the open E, to the B string, to the open E. So here's what we just played. And these are eighth notes. This song is in 3/4 time, so there are 6 of those notes in the measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and. That's how you would count that out. The second measure is exactly the same as the first measure. So if we put these first two measures together, here's what we get. Measures 3 and 4 sound like this. So here I'm going to the second fret of the G string, to the open E, first fret of the B string, back to the open E, open B to the open E. So there's measure number 3. So once again, here's measure number 3. Moving on to measure number 4, I'm now going to play on the second fret of the G string to the open E, open G to the open E, third fret of the D to the open E. So measures 3 and 4 together sound like this. So now we've learned the first 4 measures. Measures 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the same as measures 1 through 4. So we've actually learned the first 8 measures. So let's go back and play the first 8 measures now. Okay, moving along into measure 9. Now the song is going to slow down. It's called a retard for measure number 9, and we're going to arpeggiate through an E chord. I'm going to start off on the low E string, and then jump over with my thumb from the E to the D string, then arpeggiate the top 3 strings with the I, M, and A fingers. First finger, middle finger, and the ring finger. Following that arpeggio, we're going to strum through the E major chord, all 6 strings, and not too fast. We want to try and separate the strings a little bit. So together, it would sound like this. Next phrase. Now this part of the song does not really need to be in time. The idea is to play slowly. It says slowly with expression. So feel free to just kind of slow it down, take your time, make sure the notes count when you play them, okay? Play it like you mean it. So we're going to start off by playing the D string to the G string, and then we're going to pick the E string, G string, and the B string from that E major chord. While the E string rings, play the B string open 2 times. Now we're going to move to an F chord, 3rd fret D string, 2nd fret G, 1st fret B. Then play 3 to 1 on the B string while the D string rings. So once again, back to the E chord and pick out the low E, the G, and the B string. Okay, so here's the phrase we just learned. Okay, the next phrase is very similar. Why don't I play it first and then we'll break it down. Okay, so if we're forming the E chord still with the left hand, we're going to start off by picking the D and the G string, and then play the E, G, and B together. While the low E string rings, play the B string open 2 times. Play the F chord. This time we're going to play 3, 1, 3 on the B string. And then we're going to go to an E chord and we're going to pick the low E and then the top 3 strings with that. So the phrase we just learned once again sounds like this. So let's go back and pick it up from measure number 9. Okay, now we're up to measure 17. We're going to have a single note line now, and with the right hand, I'm going to go to the rest stroke that I referred to in the beginning of this DVD. And once again, the rest stroke is simply used when we play single note lines, or it helps to bring out melodies within arpeggios because we can strike the string a little harder. And once again, the idea is we're going to strike, let's say I strike the high E string, I'm then going to follow through and let my finger rest on the B string. So keep that in mind as you're going through this phrase. The first measure of the phrase sounds like this. So that's the open high E to the 1st fret of the high E, 3rd fret of the B back to the open E, 1st fret to the 3rd fret of the B. And there's measure 17. The next measure sounds like this. So here I'm going to play the open B to the 1st fret of the B, 2nd fret of the G to the 1st fret of the B, open B to the 2nd fret of the G string. So measure 17 and 18 together. And with the right hand, I'm going between the first finger and the middle finger. Okay, now I'm going to form an E chord. I'm going to start off at the 1st fret of the G string, down to the low E, and then forming the E chord with the left hand, I'm then going to strike the D string, G string, B string, high E. And then I'm going to strum through the E chord. Okay, so picking it up from measure 17, here's the phrase we just learned. Okay, the next 8 measures are the same as the first 8 measures. And this brings us to the final 2 measures. We're going to start off on the 2nd fret of the D string, form an E major chord, play the low E string, jump with your thumb over to the D string, play the D, and then arpeggiate here, G string, B string, high E string, and then the final chord of the song, we're just going to strum through an E chord. So here's the final section of the song, picking it up from measure 21. All right, well, there you have all of the pieces for Malaguena. I just want to talk real briefly about some of the tempo markings you'll need to be aware of when playing through this song. We're going to start off allegro, or rather quickly. The second section is going to slow down. I mentioned the retard when we get to the E chord. Now when we have the single note phrase, we're going to accelerate through the single note phrase. So it sounds nice if you kind of start off slow and then you pick it up and then you put on the brakes a little bit towards the end. And you can just let that E chord ring at the end of that section. And then we're back to the first section again, which will also be played rather quickly. Okay, so keep that in mind as you go through the song. Have some fun with it.